That might be a gripping spot, dude. Oh my god, dude, that's easy. Ha 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 ha. It's a nice 4.5 pounder, dude. How about it, boys? Absolute giant, dude. Look how fat. Look how fat that thing is.
So if you guys like dirty little mods, you're gonna really like this video. What we're talking about today is these guys right here. You know, when it comes to winter, it's tough to beat a small plastic swim bait. The ridge body, the soft pliability, it catches me a ton of fish and it catches me big fish. And there's just something about it in that cold weather temperatures, when water's in the 40s, lower 50s, where it's unstoppable, dude. And people are throwing it. So what I've been thinking about is different ways to kind of modify my presentation with these small swim baits, to change it up, sort of vary the presentation slightly, how to rig it, as well as the setup to throw these small swim baits when you're fishing in winter during these cold weather periods. So hit that like and subscribe button for me. Let's get to it. So this time of year, there's two general sizes that I'm going to throw, either a 2.8, which is the smaller version, or this 3.3. That seems to be like my standards until we get to spring, kind of like that late pre-spawn. Setup wise, so what I have right here, this is a monster bass. This is the lunker stick, the 7-foot medium light. I did get a new, this is the Daiwa Exceller. I really like this thing. It's a medium price point reel, around $100 from Tackle Warehouse. You can see I have bright green braid on it. That's 12-pound braid. I'm running it to 8-pound sniper fluorocarbon. That's kind of like my finesse setup. It's a 7-foot medium light, has a nice little tip, because a lot of times most of the bites that you get on this are really their weight. You know, if they're smashing it, maybe you get a tick or a thump, but a lot of times you're just reeling and that whole rod bends over. So it's a lot like crankbait fishing, where you have to have a rod that sort of absorbs that tension, absorbs that impact, and allows you to get a good hook set without actually pulling it away from the fish. So a couple variations that I've been doing, I've been throwing this guy in place of the Keitech quite a bit, and this is the Cast Prodigy. It offers some different features to that small swim bait game, but it's the only sort of offshoot of that small Keitech that I've found that really offers the same features and the same benefits, if you will. A lot of the other knockoffs, the tails are too thick, the plastic's too hard, they don't use the right type of plastic, it doesn't wag in the cold water. So I'm super stringent about this, because in these cold water conditions, you need the exact right bait in order to get bites. So that leads to our mods. My general presentation for this is like a 1/4 ounce ball head. You can see I already have a cast rigged up right here, but a 1/4 ounce or a 3/8 ounce ball head with a small 2/0 hook. That's what I catch probably 90% of my fish on. It's super simple to fish. All you're gonna do is cast it out and you kind of slow reel it. If you're on a shallower lake, you know, go down to an 1/8 ounce. It really depends on your water column. That 1/4 ounce I use anywhere from like 10 down to about 30 feet. I'll use that 3/8 if I want to reel a little bit faster, or if I'm fishing way deep, like 40 to 60, dude, like way deep. I wanted to sort of present the same thing, but vary it up a little bit. There's two specific ways that I'm mixing it up, and let me show you. So there's been a lot of talk about like hover rigs, you know, using the little like tungsten nails and stuff to kind of weigh things down. What I wanted to try to do is, a lot of times when you're fishing this ball head, you kill it and you do what's called a tight line technique, and that causes the bait to sort of pendulum down in a sort of very gradual manner. I wanted the bait to fall as it does that more horizontally, or I'm sorry, vertically, instead of kind of like head down. I wanted it to kind of fall like that. So I was thinking about different ways to kind of like modify it. Basically, there's a small chamber in there, and you can pop out, I'm gonna use my teeth quick, pop out this rattle, and you have this little rattle that's kind of in the chest of the bait right here. So it goes into this little slot, but when you pull out that rattle, you have an empty sort of chamber, an empty kind of pocket, and it's the perfect size to put a nail weight. So what I've been doing is taking my traditional ball head, in my little Bass Mafia box, I store all my little nail weights right here. The tungsten nail weights are pretty compact, and I have a bunch to do that hover rigging. So what I'll do is I'll actually take what is a 1/16 ounce or a 3/32 nail weight, and so I'll already have it rigged on a ball head, and I'll grab this little nail weight out, and what I'm doing is I'm adding a nail weight to the chest of this bait right here, which does not inhibit me to rig it up on a ball head. So I can still rig that ball head right there, but basically this bait's semi-transparent so you can kind of see it, but that nail is right in the sort of the front, I'd say front mid body of that bait. And what it does is it sort of keels it out a little bit. So when this thing falls, it's not falling so much like that, but it's falling kind of in a gradual sort of even way. Because if you'll notice, like bait fish, they don't go down. They drop, you know. It's not like a pointed up and down thing where they're darting down. They're just kind of like changing their placement in the water column. So I'm trying to sort of mimic that. The other thing is we get a shad kill every once in a while, and those shad, when they're dying, like I said, they're not like nose pointed down. They're kind of like settling down because they're just barely staying alive, and then they kind of suspend and go down. It also mimics a lot that hover rig presentation where you're using like a set back weight to make that bait more horizontal as it falls vertically. It's been a very cool mod for that even keel drop and just getting that bait a little bit deeper and doing something slightly different with it. The other one is kind of a variation on that, and I showed you guys a rig last year where we were basically nose hooking this cast baits and reeling it, and we'd put that belly weight in. It was super light, like a 16th or 3/32, and we'd nose hook it and just reel it, and you just ever so slowly. The medium light is almost not light enough for it. You almost need like a light rod to throw it. It's super difficult to cast, but it draws fish up in very clear water, and you can fish it so slow, dude. And that's really a key when these water temps get down into that winter kind of low 40s. I'm sure some of you guys even see upper 30s. That slow presentation. The other key too is it allows you to keep that bait up in the water column, almost hovering like we talk about with that hover rig. And that's the key, because I think in a lot of these clear water situations, these fish are coming up to eat. They're not going down to eat. So you always want to stay kind of above their heads, but as neutrally buoyant as possible. So what I'm actually doing is I'm removing the tail, and I don't need to cut it off in this situation. So Cast came out, and I don't even know what it's called yet, but Cast came out with this straight tail bait, and I think it's meant for like drop shotting and like Damiki rigging and stuff like that. And I'm like, bro, like I can do something really fun with that. So what I found is it's that same swim bait style body, but it has that straight tail on it. So what I did is I actually took just a little circle hook like this and circle hooked it through the nose, kind of like we did with that Prodigy, you know, just to reel it. And then I'm still putting a little nail weight into that chest cavity just like that and popping it down. But what I'm doing with this thing, instead of you know, like jerking it maybe like a fluke or something like that, I'm fishing this exactly like the Prodigy, like that boot tail. But since there's no tail to ride that bait up, I'm getting deeper. And what I've found is, I don't know if you guys fish a lot of spy baits. I've shown them a lot in the videos, like that Duo Realis. So that spy bait has sort of a wiggle to it, even though it's a straight bait. So you'll be reeling, and it has kind of a little bit of a shimmy, nothing much. And then as it falls, it has a little shimmy too when you stop reeling. And what I found with this straight tail is, if I cast it out, sink it down to whatever depth I'm targeting, and reel it ever so slowly, this thing does this. It wiggles, dude. It has this little kind of tight, very non-pronounced shimmy to it, but it's this very soft kind of swimming action, and it's basically a swim bait without a tail. A lot like kind of the wagtails that we'll use. There's just this slight shimmy, and when I kill it, it does this, so it falls vertically, but it actually, almost like a Senko or a stick bait, it kind of does this shimmy as it falls. So it's that same tight line style presentation, but it's a different fall. Now granted, this is a much lighter presentation, so you're gonna have to fish it slow, and it's not super great for ultra deep. You know, we're talking like 8 to 12, 8 to 20 foot, depending on how clear your water is and how far your fish will come up. But it is an ultra finesse technique, same concepts as fishing that small swim bait like the Keitech or like the Cast, but it's definitely a different presentation because you don't have that tail on there, and you have a different fall. You have that vertical, sort of like horizontal wobble as it falls. Both these guys, though, I've been absolutely killing it on because I've been fishing for a lot of these suspended fish or fish that are out kind of over grass lines and that, and that's what they do in winter. You know, they move up and down. If you got a warm day, sun's warming the surface of the water, the bait starts to rise, the bass start to rise. But they're never like buried down in the grass like I found them in fall and things along those lines. They seem to be kind of elevated above, sort of swimming around in the ether, swimming around in no man's land. So the whole key is using baits and presentations to target sort of that middle water column without actually being on the bottom, sort of suspending or getting your bait to be as neutrally buoyant as possible right in that middle water column to draw those fish up when they're active. So cool presentations, dude. I would highly recommend giving it a try if you enjoy throwing a Keitech. I catch a ton on that Keitech style presentation, and the Cast is an awesome mimic. One of the few that I've found that I actually use in place of that Keitech. It's much more durable, but you're not sacrificing any of the softness of the plastic. It wags beautifully in 40-degree temps, you know, like it has that sort of wobble. It's also a little different presentation, and with that belly-weighted tungsten nail in there, you get like a different fall, a more horizontal fall, just like with that nose hook. And I think especially with that tight lining presentation, which is where I get a ton of bites this time of year, basically throwing it out, doing a couple very slow reels, and then killing it, but keeping tension on the line, the bait kind of paralleling or penduluming down. It adds a different flavor and a different look to that bait when you're actually doing that presentation, and I catch absolute giants on that, largemouth, smallmouth, and spots. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, though. Check out that Cast baits. You can probably do this with a Keitech, but the Cast comes set up ready to kind of, you know, stick that in because it already has a cavity in the chest. But try it out. It's super cool, especially if you enjoy throwing small swim baits this time of year. Hit that like and subscribe button for me. I'm going to give Bog a pat, and we are going fishing.